Hey, this is my impression of a Dark Souls Remastered YouTube video's comment section.
This game's too different! It's not different enough!
It's funny to me that the downfall of the Dark Souls community, insofar as YouTube's concerned at least, just reading the comments of all the content creators who have made videos, reading their comment sections, the downfall of the Dark Souls community on YouTube is, and hear me on every level when I say this, the downfall is adaptability. Ironic, no? Thinking man meme. So, the network test. I had very limited time, I had very limited weapons, items, and stuff like that I could use, but I tried my best to make do. Again, another thing I had is very limited knowledge, but I tried to take what knowledge I did have, and I tried to apply it so that we could understand which techniques and mechanics were still in the game. Again, it doesn't look like they've changed much of anything at all. The Dark Souls that you know and love, or hate and loathe, is still here. It's still the exact same. I want to emphasize this. Backstabs are not the end of the world. Backstabs are not the end of the world. Backstabs are not the end of the world. If you're like me and you do invasions, honest to God, 50% of the techniques and stuff we talk about will probably never come into play. It's only when you meet, like, the quote-unquote tryhards, the duelists, the people who've been playing this game for a long time. That's when this stuff will come into play. Most of the time, it's not going to look like that, and you're not even going to have to worry about this stuff. But it's always good to know it, right? Knowledge always helps. Now, in the first video, one of the things I brought up was infinite stunlock and toggle escapes, and some people said, what are those things? So I will try and explain those to you. Now, having said that, the first thing I want to say is the infinite stunlock thing. I talked about that, and I got a lot of contradictory information. Some people said one-handed Claymore R1 had infinite stunlock. Some people said it had been taken out with the Prepare to Die patch. Check out this Greatsword, Ultra Greatsword, 2 R1s combo. Doesn't look like he can get out of a third, but I can't swing it a third time because I don't have the stamina, because this is a network test. Even with the Ring of Favor. But as you can see, it does appear to look like Ultra Greatswords do in fact have infinite stunlock. What is infinite stunlock? It basically means if I hit you with that first R1, you can't escape the second unless you've toggled escaped out of it. We'll go over what toggle escaping is for those of you who don't know what that is. I will explain it. I'll show it off in slow motion. But there you go. It appears that infinite stunlock still does exist. So if infinite stunlock still exists and toggle escape still exist, we should be okay in terms of that. But also keep in mind, the netcode is better. Parrying things is a lot easier in Dark Souls 1 Remastered. I'm going to go over that a lot more towards the end of the video. But the first thing I wanted to address was the infinite stunlock. It does appear to still be in the game. You can tell when I hit these people with an R1, they aren't able to get out of that stunlock. So they're definitely going to need the toggle escape. Infinite stunlock appears to be in. Toggle escape is in. What is toggle escape? This guy's going to hit me. I'm going to toggle my right directional button, and I escape the stunlock. Toggle escape. I switched weapons, and the switching weapon animation gives me infinite poise, and I'm able to just completely ignore the stunlock. I escaped the stunlock by toggling my weapon. Toggle escape, for those of you who've never seen it. You guys, you're looking at this video and you're hearing these terms, and it just looks like backstab after backstab. What the hell even is this? How does this work? Maybe when you played Dark Souls 1, you weren't into the PvP back then. Maybe since then you've gotten into PvP in the later games, but you've always just assumed Dark Souls 1 is an absolute backstab fest. You wouldn't be wrong. Now, if you're anything like me, when somebody beats you over and over again with a certain weapon or a certain technique, the fastest way to learn how to counter it is to pick up that weapon, pick up that technique, and you use it. Watch how people beat you when you implement it. That's the fastest way to learn against stuff. That, and check out this guy on YouTube. His name is Kali, K-A-L-I. I'll put a link in the description to his YouTube channel. This guy is like a wealth of knowledge. You have to check him out, especially if you want to counter backstabs. Now, right off the bat, a lot of you people that are on my channel and you're here for Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 3 is what, got you to subscribe to my channel, and you see this Dark Souls 1 PvP, some people are saying they have no interest in it whatsoever in Dark Souls Remastered. Either one, because they never played this game, so they don't have any, nostalgia for it, or two, they don't understand it and they don't like the way it looks. Maybe they've got bad, like a bad taste in their mouth from a Dark Souls playthrough, back when the game was new and they didn't understand PvP. There's a million reasons. A lot of people, and that's, look, I'm not here to change your mind. I don't get paid if you buy Dark Souls 1 Remastered. All I'm going to do is just tell you why it interests me. It's a Dark Souls game with a world full of people that I can invade. I love invasions. Random invasions are my favorite thing. And because of that, I will also run into less of the mechanics and the exploitable stuff that people don't like the Havelmom, Crystal Great Club, Backstab, insta-kills. I'm not gonna have to deal with that as often as a person who wants to do like meta-level dueling and stuff. I'm in it for the gank spanks, essentially. Fighting the co-opers, the 2 and 3v1s, that's what interests me. I just like matching wits against a group of other players. I think that's fun. I'm going to have that in Dark Souls Remastered because a lot of people are going to be playing it. People often ask me if games PvP is dead. People will say, oh, is Bloodborne PvP dead? It's not dead. It's as long as co-op is alive, PvP is alive in Bloodborne. So I started playing these games with Dark Souls 1. Just the PvE. That was all I was worried about. That's all I wanted to play. Dark Souls 2 PvE came next, and then I did a little PvP. And then Bloodborne, and I did a little more PvP. And then Dark Souls 3, and I got like balls deep in the PvP. But it all started with the PvE. I played these games because they were difficult. I wanted to get good. I wanted to understand and play and get better. I don't play these games because I'm awesome at them right off the bat. The same carries over for the PvP. If you're anything like me and you're playing this because it piques your interest, you want that continued journey of getting good, then come with me. If you're here and you already know all this shit and you're a Dark Souls 1 pro and you want to like point and laugh at the new kids, more than welcome to. Now, for the second part of this network test, I did, I played around a lot less with the Black Knight sword, even if it meant losing invasions. I wanted to play with the Balder Side Sword, it's one of my favorites, and I wanted to play with the Claymore. I ended up loving it. But let's talk about, right off the bat, backstab chains. You just saw one there. I got that guy out of a parry, I hit him with a backstab. What is a backstab chain? A backstab chain is when you get somebody with a backstab when they're waking up. This is one of the easiest ways to do it. I'm going to get behind him, I'm going to press parry, and I'm going to mash R1. Because I'm pressing parry, the parry animation is playing out. So I can mash R1 and not do an R1 attack. But if I happen to get a backstab with one of those R1s, the backstab takes the priority and I get a wake up on backstab. You can't escape it. I'll go over that a little bit later. But it's important to remember, you can't outrun a backstab. So here's a real simple term that all of you should be familiar with if you know anything at all about any PvP in any Souls game. Spacing. Spacing is still the bulk of everything. What you just saw right there was good spacing on my part. Here you're going to see it again. The host is going to go for a running R1 with that Black Knight sword, probably trying to set up the R1, the running R1 into R1 true combo. I outspace it, he gets punished. I punish the Phantom for swinging into me, and what do you know? Spacing just won me this invasion. Spacing and poise just won me this invasion. So it's 1v1 now. It's a solo host. He doesn't know what to do. He's hurt. This backstab, that's not what won the invasion. Haters are going to look at that and they're going to say, oh, backstab. Look at the backstab. That backstab is not what won the invasion. Spacing is what won that invasion. Spacing is how you get backstabs. Let's talk about another thing that Dark Souls 3 fans or players and Dark Souls 2 players, whatever, you guys will know this term, panic rolls. In Dark Souls 3, if I swing a straight sword, I hit you twice. If you just mash circle, That's a panic roll. You're not responding to anything I'm doing. You're just rolling out. Well, in Dark Souls 3, if you panic roll, there's a good chance I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna roll catch you. In Dark Souls 1, if you panic roll, I'm gonna backstab you because you leave your back wide open. Now this opens up, a big thing. Like, what's more important, having that fast roll or having poise? Which one do you give up? Now in the network test, if you wanted, you couldn't have both in the network test. You could have one or the other. I opted to go with the medium roll and decent poise. That's what worked for me. Now when the game actually comes out, that might change. We'll see. Those are still questions that remain to be seen. What you're about to see right here is a backstab cancel. How did Solaire cancel the damage on that backstab? He did it by hitting me. Now, on both of our screens, that backstab still played out, but he didn't take any damage from the backstab. You can do that, and that will cancel backstab damage. That's a backstab cancel. You can also counter backstab cancel. Jesus Christ, I know, that sounds awful. Hear me out, it's really not that bad. If two players are both circle strafing each other, and they both go for a backstab at the exact same time, what ends up happening is they both backstab each other on their screen. The person who pressed R1 last has a chance to actually roll out of the backstab. Right here you're going to see another backstab chain. I initiate it with the kick, but I was given it by the panic roll. Do you see and do you understand the difference? Yes, my kick triggered it, but I was given it by the panic roll. You cannot outrun a backstab. Please keep that in mind. So, for invaders, it's going to be very important to avoid getting backstabbed. And how do you do that? The most boring and simple way is lock onto your opponent and walk backwards. That's it. It's the same as Dark Souls 3. That's the same as it's always been. Lock on and walk backwards. There are more, like I said, there are backstab, reversal, cancels, all kinds of stuff, okay? But that's not super important. You're not going to run into that a whole lot until you start getting into the quote-unquote high-level PvP. The high-speed dudes doing the high-level PvP. For an invader, for somebody who's just doing simple PvP, all you're going to need to know is you can't outrun a backstab. If you give somebody your back for even a second, they're going to backstab you. Because this game is slower, it's more methodical. You need to think about every action. Every action actually has consequence. Here you're going to see me stay locked on, block when it's appropriate, and back up. And here comes the world's slowest turn and burn. Kind of. I'm taking my shots where I can get them, but I'm not giving these guys my back. I'm playing very slowly, I'm playing very methodically, I'm taking backstabs when they're available. Because there's two of them and one of me. Anytime I put them in a backstab, that's more time spent that they can't hit me. It's time spent not stressing about whether or not these dudes hit me or not. But there I got to avoid that, you know what I mean? I got to avoid the backstab by just staying locked on and walking backwards. Now, you can go for things like pivots, and you can outplay these guys, but I don't have that level of skill yet, so I'm relying on what I know works. Now we've got the second invader in. Suddenly this is a whole different story. Again, if you give somebody your back, they're going to take it. You can't get mad at it. It's a much slower game. It's a much more methodical game. Your actions have real weight and consequences. Whereas in Dark Souls 3, maybe you would have, taken a couple of R1s for a mistake. In Dark Souls 1, there's a good chance you're going to take a backstab if you make that big of a mistake. One thing I liked to try out was drinking Estus as bait. In Dark Souls 3, you might drink Estus to set up a parry bait. In Dark Souls 1, I'm not sure what we can do with it just yet, but using Estus as bait to separate two players seemed to work on a couple of occasions, so that was something that I got interested in, but that's more of like a tactical thing, not so much a gameplay thing. Alright, so they've killed my invader partner. So I need to go back to what I know was working, which is locking on and backing up. Now in this sort of situation, I can't stop the host from resummoning. So that's something, you know, I'm giving up. So it's not like this playstyle right here is great and perfect and completely uncounterable. There's another world's slowest turn and burn, but that's the advent of fire right there. I'm starting to figure things out, you know what I mean? But notice how there are big portions of this fight where that was a failed, hey, come here, I'm drinking Estus. Notice how there are portions of this fight where everything's a backstab, and then there's portions of this fight where there's no backstabs at all. And appreciate that contrast. If you're like me and you're willing to learn, that's something that'll, you know, that grabbed my attention. Alright, so now what's the problem here? The host is running. What have I been preaching? You cannot outrun a backstab. Now right there he stopped to drink Estus, but here in a moment he's going to take off. He's running. You cannot outrun a backstab. Do not turn your back to your opponent. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. Some opponents are good at finding your back. The easiest way to deal with that is to just back up constantly. I'm not a very patient person, so I'm aggressive. I'm going to play aggressively, so I'll give my back up quite a bit. You know what I mean? But I can live with that. I can live with getting backstabbed every now and then if it means I don't have to play like an absolute passive, you know, Gandhian meta lord. But that, you just saw a really good invasion where I was able to not get backstabbed super hard because I just did the simple thing. Now again, like I said, there are more advanced backstab counters, and you can get on YouTube and you can find those videos, and when I have more time to play with Dark Souls 1, I might make some videos to go over all of that stuff. But all of that code is still in the game. The game is, for better or worse, whatever you feel, pretty much the same exact game. So I can see, you know, the double backstab reversal thing. That's still in the game, and we have an example of it here in this video that we'll show off. What's great about this is catching people from Dark Souls 3 who think rolling is the answer to every question they have, and it's just not that way anymore. In Dark Souls 3, if you were trying to gank, you could just roll your cares away. It's not like that in Dark Souls 1. Now, invaders like to complain about hosts rolling away too much, but us invaders, man, we sure do love rolling when it suits us. So keep it in mind. It's working the same way. It's back and forth. It doesn't work for hosts, but it's not going to work for the invader either. People wanted poise, and everybody says, oh, I've got poise now. I'm immortal. I can never die. I've got poise. You have to take into consideration the three guys you're fighting, they've also got it. They're going to use the same thing against you that you're using against them. But again, that's more tactical stuff. We're talking more mechanics. So I've explained toggle escapes. I've explained backstab chains and what a backstab chain is. You know, it's just anytime you get somebody in multiple critical attacks. I've gone over backstab cancels and that sort of thing. There's a lot more that, you know, I maybe don't know about, and once we actually get our hands on the game, I'll learn all that stuff, and I will be happy to teach anybody who wants to hear it from me, you know, once that day comes. But until then, this is all I had to work with. Alright, so here's something I just learned watching one of those videos by Callie. One thing you can actually do is an honest-to-God backstab reversal. And what this is when two players both go for a backstab at the exact same time. Both get backstabbed on their screen. Solaire's getting backstabbed on his screen right now. That's why when it ends, you can see he's like walking around with his shield up, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. We both got backstabbed on our screens. Now here's something that I learned. When you do that, if you were the second person to press R1, meaning if Solaire had pressed R1 first, I could have mashed circle and actually dodged the backstab and gotten out of the animation completely. That's crazy. We'll discuss that later. Here's another thing you might not have taken into consideration, though. Like I said, knocking other people out of backstabs on accidents. That's probably going to happen. So let's say you're in a backstab chain. What can you do? Well, you've seen me do the backstab chain where I backstab them, I stand behind them, I tap parry, and then I mash R1. If you just don't do anything and just stand up, you won't get caught in a backstab from that. Right there, you see me try a ravioli step. Because my opponent, he's just doing regular-ass backstab chains. So it was working because I was trying to do all this complicated shit. All I needed to do was just stand up, and then he couldn't backstab me anymore. Don't overthink it. Speaking of overthinking it, check this out. Two straight swords, sword and boards, going at it, right? This is a reaction parry against a straight sword with a medium shield. If you don't believe me, go back and rewatch it. I played it on slow motion so you could tell. He started swinging before I started parrying. That's ludicrous. That's crazy. A lot of people weren't impressed with my last video where I was like, oh my god, look, I reaction parried a greatsword. Some people said, well, you didn't actually reaction parry it. I watched it on slow motion. You still predicted it. Maybe I did. That situation right there, that was an honest-to-God reaction parry against a straight sword. That was North American servers. That means I probably had really good latency with that player. Obviously, I did. I reaction parried a straight sword. But let's go back to basics. This is a simple game. Let's use spacing. And I have a weapon that does far less damage than my opponent's weapon, but I've got the range. I've got the range, and I've got spacing on my side. So we're going to... no backstabs in this fight. You know how tryhards are always like, oh, parries don't work in duels. And they're right. You shouldn't go for parries. They're a total, crapshoot in an actual duel. I'm not sure it's going to be like that in Dark Souls 1. Parries are so reliable now. What you're about to see here, I'm using my R2s, I'm using my jump attacks, I've got range. What you're about to see me do is I get this player's timing in my head. He keeps breaking my guard, and then I reaction parry his greatsword. This is without a question a reaction parry. You can tell he was swinging like a full second before I pressed parry. I think parries are going to be very, very, very important in Dark Souls Remastered PvP. It's a simple game, and the netcode's improved, and as a result, I think you'll see parries more. Even from the people who typically wouldn't rely on that sort of thing, because it's not guaranteed. In this game, man, it's almost too easy to pass up a parry. There's also verticality, because I'm Saint Riot, and that's the end of my video. And I hope it's helped you guys. If you're like me and you're new and you're still learning, and you want to learn, I hope this has helped you somewhat. I'm still learning. Again, I'm not the de facto go-to guy for this information. There are more knowledgeable people than me out there, and I urge you to seek them out. To the community that's already here, the Dark Souls 1 community, I would just say, you probably want some people's ass to kick with your tech, right? Well, here's your chance. But if you want people to keep playing this game, they're going to need to understand it. Thanks for watching.